Common Sense Army, it is Tuesday, and on today's episode of the Why I'm Right podcast, we're breaking down the Black Swan further. I talked about it last week, but Democrats are signaling something big is coming, and I believe Maxine Waters signaled something huge is coming really soon to the United States of America. And then talking about Joe Biden and the future of the Democrat Party, I have a big prediction for the 2024 election you aren't going to want to miss. This is the Why I'm Right podcast.
We live in a world filled with noise and confusion, clickbait, and outright lies in the media. But here, we cut through the clutter to find the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. This is Why I'm Right, the podcast where we dig deeper, ask the tough questions, and unravel the tangled webs of political and current events. Join us as we dissect the latest news, analyze political rhetoric, and challenge the narratives that dominate the mainstream discourse. We're not shy. From dissecting the motives behind policy decisions to uncovering the hidden agendas of public figures, it's what we do. It's time to think for ourselves. This is Why I'm Right. And now your unafraid and unapologetic host, Matt Taylor.
He is right. This is the Why I'm Right podcast, and I am Matt Taylor. And after a long weekend, it is now Tuesday. I'm back in the studio, and I couldn't be happier to have you here. If this is your first episode on the Why I'm Right podcast, welcome. If you're already a member of the Common Sense Army, I'm glad you're here as well. I say it on every episode. If you guys can do me one favor, we're growing the Common Sense Army one day at a time, one podcast at a time. And the one way you can help in this mission is by clicking subscribe and sharing these videos with your friends and your family, whether you're hearing this here on Spotify or you're hearing this for the first time on Instagram. Wherever you're hearing this, make sure you subscribe and share these videos. We want people who agree and disagree with us because this country needs more than anything else free speech and the ability to have political discourse. Right now is the most crucial time in our nation's history. And without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Like I said, it was a long weekend, but I got a lot of messages from people, a lot of people emailing here to the show talking about last week's episode. I'm going to touch on that here first. Last week, I talked about the Black Swan and how I believe the Democrats are signaling and gearing up. We see the mainstream media, we see Hollywood, we see Netflix, we see everyone signaling a Black Swan event is coming to the United States, something we have never seen before, and I think it's going to be huge. And I wanted to continue that conversation because a lot of people were asking what I believe the Black Swan event will be. And I want to touch on that here to open the podcast. Now, if you don't know who Maxine Waters is a real staple in the Democrat Party and someone who is known for her speech and known for rallying up the crowds. Well, recently, she was out again talking to the media and talking about her fear that something is coming. And she signaled that it looks like violence will come if Donald Trump wins the election. I say it here on this podcast all the time. The liberal MO is accuse the other side of exactly what you're doing. Accuse the Republicans of exactly what the Democrats are doing. So when someone like Maxine Waters, a staple in the left-wing liberal agenda, is out there in the media talking about how she believes violence will occur if Donald Trump wins. And I just told you the MO of the Democrat Party and the left-wing liberals in this nation is accuse the other side of exactly what you're doing to distract you from exactly what they're doing. Accuse the MAGA crowd of potential violence if Trump loses the election. What does that mean they're doing? It means the liberals, the Democrats, and these same people that are funding these kill the Jews, pro-Palestine, pro-Gaza, pro-Hamas protests around the country, those people are gearing up and getting ready for violence in America like we've never seen. I believe, again, this continues the conversation from last week. A Black Swan event is coming, whether it's before the election or between the election when Donald Trump takes office in January of next year. Something big is coming. And Maxine Waters is signaling it here. I'm going to play clip 1 here. This is Maxine Waters talking about how she's concerned about MAGA America, and she's concerned about violence breaking out if Donald Trump loses the election in November. Here's Maxine Waters, then we're going to dive into it a little bit further.
This is a man who we'd better be careful about, and I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask the Justice Department, and I'm going to ask the President to tell us what they're going to do to protect this country against violence if he loses. I want to know about all of those right-wing organizations that he's connected with, who are training up in the hills somewhere and targeting, what communities they're going to attack.
Well, if you listen to that right there, it seems very specific. Dan Bongino talked about it on his episode earlier this week. He believes that Maxine Waters, again, Dan Bongino, someone that I follow very closely, he actually was in the Secret Service. He came out and said he believes Maxine Waters must be getting information from somewhere, whether that's the FBI, the CIA, someone is spying on MAGA America. And the reason he says that is because why? She talks about how people are training in the woods, in the mountains, for their attack after Trump loses the election. And her fear is there will be violence like we've never seen in this nation if Donald Trump loses the election. Everyone out there is talking about this clip on the left, on the right, in the center. Everyone just thinks she's crazy. I believe she's signaling. I believe it's a core principle of the Democrat movement, the liberal movement, is accuse the other side of exactly what you're doing. And so I believe when she's saying that she knows that MAGA Republicans are out there training for violence in the streets, if Donald Trump loses the election, I believe you got to flip that around. And I believe Democrats and left-wing liberals in this nation are training, and we're seeing it right now in real time. They're training right now in real time about protests. They're training right now in real time how to riot, how to incite violence. Look at the college campuses. I talked about it so much over the last 2 weeks. Look at the college campuses right now. These protesters have no idea what they're protesting because this is just a training event for what's really to come. Something big. These are the same people that rioted with BLM, the defund the police movement. These are the same people now on these college campuses across the country yelling death to Jews, kill America, death to America, kill the Jews, and all this nonsense right now that's going on these campuses. And just think about who Maxine Waters is. If you don't know, I already mentioned it, she is a voice in the Democrat Party. This is clip 2 here. This is the same person that says she fears Donald Trump and the MAGA movement are inciting violence. She's the same person that said Trump incited an insurrection on January 6th. This is the same Maxine Waters right here. Listen to this.
Let's stay the course. Let's make sure we show up wherever we have to show up. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
That sounds a lot like inciting violence against people in the Trump administration, the Trump campaign. It sounds a lot like Maxine Waters says we need to push back on them. Get up in their faces. Is that not insurrection at its finest? So when she's saying that she's concerned that if Trump wins the election, if Trump loses the election, there's going to be violence in this nation, I believe what she's really telling us is when Trump wins, which looks very, very likely at this point. I'm going to touch on that later in this episode. But as Trump continues to increase in the polls, and it's becoming increasingly likely that Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States, she's letting us know there will be violence in this country, and it's not going to be from the MAGA crowd. It's going to be from these same people that are funding these protests on college campuses across the country. The same people who funded the BLM protest, the same people who funded the defund the police movement. We already know who the characters are. We already know it's George Soros. We already know it's Rockefeller. We already know it's Bill Gates. These people have been openly adamant about their involvement, their funding in these protests right now going on in this country. And the same people who are financing these pro-Palestine protests today on college campuses that are yelling, "Kill the Jews," they're going to finance the violence post-Trump win. Post-Trump becoming the next president of the United States. I believe the same people financing these Kill the Jews protests today will finance those protests, those riots. The violence, I believe, will be greater than we've ever seen in this nation. It'll make January 6th look like kids' play. And these pro-Palestine protests right now and the crazy liberal violence that we're seeing on campus, this will look like child's play, folks. Because as I said for the last 3 weeks, none of these protests make any sense that we're seeing today. I know there's an agenda at play behind them, especially when you see the money pouring in from these big players. I just mentioned their names. These big players aren't throwing money at these for no reason. What's the point? What's the point? And when you sit back and you really look at the whole picture, Maxine Waters laid it out for us perfectly. This is a test run, a fire alarm, a lockdown drill. This is just practice before the game. And I know something big will happen when Donald Trump wins the election. And I'm telling you right now, you guys have to remember this podcast right here, because I believe the riots will be insane. And they're all going to be funded by these same core people who have funded and who have monetized off of and who have sowed division in this nation that's not really there. I did a whole podcast last week about how these protests are here to sow division that's not there, to divide America, a division that's not really there. The polarization of the parties is not really there. I think most Americans have common sense. Most Americans, when you sit down and have a conversation, obviously we're not going to agree on everything. But I believe more people have common sense, and they're looking to control. And the one way they can control is by splitting us up. Because if we're unified, America, they can't control us. And so I'm going to shift the focus now. I had to touch on it because I got so many questions over the weekend about what I thought this Black Swan event's going to be. Everyone sent me their opinions. Some people think Trump's going to be assassinated. Some people think a lot of different things. I got a lot of different opinions from you guys. Again, if you want to send me your thoughts or ask me a question, all you have to do is send me an email, matt@whyimrightpodcast.com. That's matt@whyimrightpodcast.com. I respond to every single email I get. And I'll talk about it here. I had to bring it up because you guys brought it up over the weekend. And one of the biggest storylines of the last 2 weeks, obviously, if we put the Palestine protest away for a second, one of the biggest storylines, obviously, is Donald Trump's in court. We all know about the gag order. We all know about what's going on, the charade and the Stormy Daniels trial right now in New York City. We've talked about it here on this podcast, how the whole thing's a sham. And right now, we're seeing a judge threaten Donald Trump, threatening jail time for Donald Trump. Could you imagine what would happen if Donald Trump goes to jail? I believe it'll be the biggest blunder we've ever seen in modern day politics by the Democrats. It'd be a mistake. They turned Donald Trump, a man that the left has hated, who is villainized. They've gone after him. They turned that man into a martyr. But just listen to Donald Trump here because it's very important. This is Donald Trump talking outside the courthouse. I believe it was yesterday. Here's Trump.
They all want to keep me off the campaign trail. That's all this is about. This is about election interference. How do we stop it? And it's a disgrace. And then you have the other thing that maybe is even more disgraceful is the gag order, where I can't I have to watch every word I tell you people. You ask me a question, a simple question, I'd like to give it, but I can't talk about it. Because this judge has given me a gag order and said you'll go to jail if you violate it. And frankly, you know what? Our Constitution is much more important than jail. It's not even close. I'll do that sacrifice any day. But what's happening here is a disgrace, and the appellate courts ought to get involved.
You heard Donald Trump there. Our Constitution is more important than jail. Again, this judge in New York City, Judge Merchan, has put a gag order on Donald Trump telling him he can't talk about his defense. He can't talk about this sham trial right now going on in New York City. But yet, Stormy Daniels is allowed to do interviews on the media, talk about this case in detail. Michael Cohen, who's one of the witnesses for the prosecution, he can go out on TikTok, release videos. He can make appearances on CNN, MSNBC. But Donald Trump can't talk. Think about how unconstitutional, again, our foundation of this United States of America, the greatest experiment in the history of the world, is based on the First Amendment. The reason it is the First Amendment is because every right thereafter is meaningless without the First Amendment of free speech. If we don't have free speech, we aren't free. And if Donald Trump can't talk, and he can't defend himself, and he can't run a campaign right now for president of the United States, and they're going to threaten him, and they're going to obviously fine him over and over for violating the gag order. And now the Judge Merchan, is threatening Donald Trump with jail time. Listen to this here. This is big.
Judge Merchan just said it's clear the $1,000 fine is not working. He said going forward, this court will have to consider a jail sentence. He then said the last thing I want to consider is jail. You are a former president and possibly the next president, end quote. Andy, why don't we just start right there, because he's going to assess the gag order yet again. The gag order stays, but he'll assess the fine. So I think you're up to 10, 11, maybe 14 grand. I don't know. I lost count. Andy, go ahead.
Bill, as I said to you last week, if I were Trump, I basically bring in a check for 10 grand every Monday and just say whatever I want. This is all politics at this point. I don't think the judge, it's easy for me to say because he's not going to put me in custody, but I don't think the judge, because of the politics of this, it would be disastrous politics for the Democrats, for the judge to put former President Trump in jail over this.
See, I don't agree with him. He's saying, obviously, that Democrats don't want him to put Donald Trump in jail. I don't know. I already mentioned if they do put Trump in jail and they make Trump a martyr, it'll be the biggest blunder in modern day politics that we've ever seen in this nation. Because, again, you would turn Donald Trump into a martyr for the Make America Great Again movement, and he would get sympathy. He'd go up 2 or 3 points nationwide in this country, and I believe the election would be over. Again, like I said last week, none of the stuff the Democrats have done since they threw the warning shot over the bow of Donald Trump back in August of last year, when Trump was talking about running for president once again. They raided Mar-a-Lago. And since that moment, Trump has only increased in the polls, and Joe Biden has only decreased in the polls. Every time they charge him, he goes up. Every time they, again, even in New York City, he's been forced to pay fines to E. Jean Carroll. Again, he went up in the courts, in the polls. He was forced to pay hundreds of millions of dollars bond for a loan in New York City. He lost that case. What happened? Up in the polls once again. They charge him in Georgia. What happened? Up in the polls. Every time they go after him, this is the equal and opposite reaction. I talk about it over and over. And I believe if they put Donald Trump in jail, there will be pictures of Donald Trump in a jumpsuit or whatever it's going to be. Whatever that looks like with Donald Trump in jail, you know what's going to happen. Trump already monetized off of the mugshot, right? Donald Trump ran campaign ads based on a mugshot. He came back to Twitter and posted the mugshot. You're not going to knock out Donald Trump by putting him in jail. And even McCarthy said it in that clip there. He doesn't think Democrats want him to put him in jail. He doesn't think the judge will put him in jail. I disagree. And I think right now Donald Trump has to take a really serious look at himself and say, if I'm ready, because if this judge, and I would continue to do what Trump's doing right now, which is call him on his bluff, keep talking about the case. You have freedom of speech. You need to use your freedom of speech, especially you're setting a precedent that they can go after any political candidate, anyone that's their opponent in future elections. They can go after them. They can gag them, not let them run a campaign. And Trump talked about it. They want to hold him to the courtroom. They want to take the money away so that he's focused his money, his time, his energy on the courts and fighting these sham trials and defending himself instead of running the campaign against Joe Biden. And I told you before this episode started, I'm going to give you a prediction for 2024, a prediction I've never said on this podcast, but a prediction that I've said for the last year. I've waited for the right moment to bring this to this podcast because I think, again, this is the agenda of the Democrats today. And so before I give you my 2024 prediction, you got to listen to this because it's all related here. Them going after Trump and it's not working. Now they're trying to say Joe Biden, the strategy is to not show Joe Biden. The strategy is Charmin Ultra, less is more. This is really what Democrats are trying to pump to you, to me, to everyone. Their strategy is less Joe Biden because that makes sense in any campaign. Have you ever heard of a political campaign? I don't care if it's for president. I don't care if it's for any position, governor. Anything around have you ever heard a campaign strategist say, we want to show less of the candidate? Campaigns are 100% all about being seen, touching, feeling the people you are trying to elect yourself, trying to get elected for. People want to see the candidate. Listen to this. This was on MSNBC. And this is the Biden campaign 2.0, their strategy to take back the White House in 2024. Listen to this.
Biden's general election strategy is less is more. The president's aides are seeking to tighten his pitch to voters with shorter, crisper speeches. To be honest with you, Quentin, I think that's a very smart idea. I think
for everyone.
I appreciate that approach because it is a way for the president to sort of hit with clarity, stick his points and move on and not get lost and sidetracked. Give us a little bit more of the scene setting around the thinking there and trying to reimagine the campaign going forward with what you just said and this idea now of the president tighten his grip on his speeches.
Look, our campaign believes in quality over quantity. We believe that these touches, these smaller things that are getting directly to the point about what is going on in the stakes of this election are going to be easier for voters to tap into and sort of also go out and say and talk to their friends and family about what's at stake.
There is no campaign strategy that's ever been successful of quantity or quality over quantity. That's not what campaigns are. Campaigns are about being seen. Campaigns are about the people. Campaigns are about getting out there, touching, feeling, and doing things again to show the people that you're trying to get elected by who you are, what you're about, what's your message. There's never been a campaign strategy of, oh, let's hide the candidate. Unless you do what they did last time, which was steal the election, use COVID-19, hide Biden away in the basement. And they're doing the same thing here. They're flat out telling you this is about quality over quantity. Less is more. It's because every single time Joe Biden goes out in the public, he does something stupid. He reads pause on a damn teleprompter. This is bull. I hate cursing on this podcast, but this is bullshit, folks. It really is. This is not a campaign strategy. And I told you I would give you my prediction, and I'm telling you right now, Joe Biden is getting absolutely smoked. The campaign strategy from day one was go after Trump, using the courts, weaponize the Department of Justice, and go after him. And that has not worked. In fact, it's been a complete abomination. And it is shown to be one of the stupidest things because every time they charge him, every time they go after him, he increases in the polls. And like I said, that is the equal and opposite reaction. And Democrats are at a point right now where they have no choice. They have absolutely no choice. He's getting beaten in swing states. And the core, the reason Joe Biden got elected in the last election, the core is fleeting. The core is leaving. And the core is now voting for Donald Trump. Trump's winning in some of the biggest demographic groups that Joe Biden carried. And in the other groups that Joe Biden carried, Trump has significantly shrunken the gap between Biden and Trump. Listen to this. It's the last clip I'm playing on this episode, and then I'm giving you my prediction. But this all plays together, folks. It does. Joe Biden is getting absolutely smoked today, and Democrats have no choice. Listen to this.
Biden seems to be struggling with key demographic groups that he would need to win and win big if he stands a chance of being reelected.
John, there is significant softness in the support for Joe Biden among core Democrats. In this poll, he's carrying black voters by 61 points. Well, that sounds like a lot, but he carried them by 84 points back in 2020. Latino voters, a very slight Biden edge in this poll, but it was a 21-point advantage in the exit polls back in 2020. And among younger voters, under 30, we're actually seeing Trump with a slight edge. That was a big win for Biden last time around.
You hear that? Again, Trump is flipping the script here. People that supported Joe Biden, supposedly supported Joe Biden in the last election, are now supporting Donald Trump. He's flipped key demographics for the Democrat Party and shrunken the gap in the other big gap demographics that normally Democrat candidates waltz away with. And so my prediction, I know I've made you guys wait a little bit longer than normal here. My prediction is I believe, and I've said this for so long, I believe the Democrats are not going to run Joe Biden. I don't believe Joe Biden will be the candidate come election day. There's no chance. He's getting absolutely smoked, and the campaign strategy has failed epically. That is the only thing that makes sense. When they come out and tell you the campaign strategy is less is more, it's because Joe Biden keeps effing up. Joe Biden keeps saying stupid things. This past week, Joe Biden came out and said, if you elect me, your taxes are going to go up, not down. I'm slashing the Trump tax cuts. That message is not popular to anyone. Republican, Democrat, Independent. It's not. No one wants to pay more in taxes. I guess I can give him credit for maybe being honest. But no one agrees with that. No one wants to pay more to the government. No one wants to pay more taxes. This guy is a walking blunder. And after mistake, I believe the Democrats have made a decision. I think this decision was made a long time ago. A long time ago. The Democrat convention right now is coming up in a few months. It's in July. And where is the convention? It's in Chicago. Don't we know a family in politics that came out of Chicago, Illinois? A household name? Yes, I'm talking about the Obamas. I believe Michelle Obama is going to be put in as a Democrat nominee at the Chicago convention. And this decision was made a long, long time ago. And they were hoping, I really believe they were hoping that if they went after Trump in the courts, they wouldn't need to do this. Obama is the golden boy of the Democrat Party. Think about this. During the Republican debates, right, this past year, You saw a face over and over, and a face that made no sense whatsoever. And that was Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. And I believe they were testing out Gavin Newsom, see if they could input Gavin Newsom as the candidate for president on the Democrat side and how that would play. You saw him debate Ron DeSantis for no reason whatsoever and put his record on the line against the Florida governor. People are fleeing California and moving to Florida, and you're going to have him debate against DeSantis, the governor of Florida, on a national debate? It just didn't work. It's because the DEI party of the Democrat Party right now, the Democrat Party is the DEI party. And who is Joe Biden's vice president today? It's a black woman, Kamala Harris. And I believe they made a decision and said, hold on a second. In our party, can we really overlook a black woman? Could we? Could we really take a white man and make him the new presidential candidate in the Democrat Party over a black woman? They know Kamala can't run for anything. Again, she's another walking blunder. Terrible approval ratings. And these two, Biden and Kamala, are two of the least popular Democrats since Jimmy Carter. And I believe a decision was made to have the Golden Boy reunite, the Obama name, and have Michelle Obama become the Democrat nominee for president in this election against Donald Trump. And I believe the storyline they're gonna feed you, again, be looking for it now. They're already telling you. I just played you 2 clips where they're telling you the campaign strategy is less is more. And we continue to see Joe Biden, every time he is in the public eye, he looks worse and worse. Mentally, he's declining. Physically, he's declining. And I believe at some point in time, they're going to embrace the decline of Joe Biden. The media is already starting to embrace the decline of Joe Biden. It used to just be Fox News and some meme pages on Instagram, on TikTok, that made fun of Joe Biden's blunders, made fun of Joe Biden's stupidity. This is an old man we're talking about who clearly has mental decline. I've played on this podcast where he said his uncle was eaten by cannibals. He was born in the Jewish, black, Muslim culture. And, I mean, this guy has lied over and over. And I believe the way they're going to sell this message to the American people is Joe Biden needs to step away for health reasons. They're going to tell Joe Biden, you can pardon your son, you could pardon yourself. Or when Obama gets elected, Michelle Obama, she'll pardon you so you don't have to get drugged through the mud in the courts over the next remainder of your life. And that's how they're going to let Joe Biden walk away with some form of dignity, and the Democrats get what they want, which is a candidate who's a strong black woman, a minority woman, because like I just showed you, Trump has flipped the script on typically Democrat demographics. And the only way to win it back right now, I'm telling you right now, the only way to win it back is by a candidate who can inspire. So when they tell you the campaign strategy is less is more, quality over quantity, that's them signaling once again, Joe Biden is done. And so again, the convention is being held in Chicago where Obama came from. The Obama political career was born in Illinois. And I believe the Democrat convention is going to be wild this year. I do. And people out there will think this is a crazy idea. I've said this for so long. If there's one thing we know about Democrats and this Democrat Party that we're living in today, is they do not give up. So when they say less is more, quality over quantity, and they're signaling that they're just giving up, I'm telling you they're not. We already know that they're willing to do absolutely anything. They're willing to spy on a campaign. They're willing to go after and weaponize the Department of Justice. They're willing to impeach a president twice. I mean, think about what this Democrat Party and the left-wing liberals in this nation have done over the last 6-7 years. They're willing to fabricate evidence about a dossier to launch an investigation into Russia and Russia collusion, which we all know was a hoax, to stalmate Trump for years. Don't think these people won't do this. And why would it be above them? I just mentioned all the things they've done. Why would it be above them to replace a candidate who, like I just mentioned, is less popular than Jimmy Carter? This is going to happen. I'm telling you right now, this is going to happen. Joe Biden will not be the nominee. And if he is, again, I just told you, he is not going to beat Donald Trump. It's not going to happen. If it's Biden versus Trump, Trump stomps him. I believe it's going to be, if that's the case, and it's Trump-Biden, it will be annihilation like we haven't seen since Reagan. Trump will carry states that Republicans haven't won in years. Because people are fed up with this guy. I'm telling you, the Democrats have no choice but to go radical. The Democrats have no choice but to go nuclear. And they need someone with a name. They can't roll out Hillary Clinton. They're going to bring in the big gun. They're going to bring in Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. Again, these are the golden... Barack Obama is the golden boy of the Democrat Party. And they could get their first female presidential candidate ever. The first president of the United States is a female. Obama was already the first black president in history. Michelle Obama released a book this year. Went on a book campaign. I'm telling you, all the signals are signaling to you, to me, to us. Why else would it make sense that Joe Biden's campaign strategy is less is more? We want to show you less of the candidate. It makes sense because the candidate sucks. He's very unlikable. His policies are unlikable. And every time he's out there publicly, he does something stupid that Democrats have to walk back. They're going to embrace the decline of Joe Biden, and they're going to replace him at the convention in Chicago this year with Michelle Obama. I'm telling you, mark your calendars, mark your days. It will happen. And this will be Obama versus Trump. Heavyweight versus heavyweight. And it will become a campaign. I'm telling you, this is going to happen in July. You're going to have August, September, October, 3.5 months. And it's going to be a wild campaign, folks. So buckle up. Again, on the Why I'm Right podcast, I try to look beyond the narrative in the media, and we try to continue the narrative here and figure out what the heck's going on. Take the nuggets that we're getting, and I'm just telling you right now, when you take these nuggets and you put it together, the puzzle starts coming together, folks. It does. And I get it. Sounds crazy because we're only going to be months away. That's why they need a name like Obama, a household name. Democrats would line up in the streets today to vote for Obama. It's the reality. And I believe Trump's going to have his work cut out for him. If it's Michelle Obama versus Donald Trump, I believe he's going to have his work cut out for him. And I don't know if he could win that one. I don't. We'll talk about that and much more here on the Why I'm Right podcast. Again, here, folks, the one way you could help grow the Common Sense Army one day at a time, one podcast at a time, is by clicking subscribe and sharing these videos with your friends, family, people who agree, disagree, and let me know what you think. If you want to be on the Why I'm Right podcast, you want to be mentioned on the Why I'm Right podcast, or you want to ask me a question, all you have to do is send an email to matt@whyimrightpodcast.com. Visit our website, www.whyimrightpodcast.com. We have merchandise out now. And make sure you follow us on Instagram @whyimright. And like I said, folks, I hope you have a great week. We got a ton of episodes coming out the remainder of this week. And we're going to keep the conversation going, folks, so we can figure out where the future of this nation is heading and how we can make America what America is. We can conserve the agenda. We can conserve the common sense. We can conserve the Constitution. That's what conservatives are about. Conserving the liberties of the people by the people. And so, again, this has been the Why I'm Right podcast, and I just told you why I'm right.
You've been listening to Why I'm Right. Thanks for being a part of the Common Sense Army. Our passion is to cut through the noise and confusion and to bring light to clickbait and outright lies in the media. Unafraid, unapologetic, real and raw. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram @WhyI'mRight, on X @WhyI'mRightPod. And for more, hit the website at www.whyimrightpodcast.com. See you next time.